The wind blows across a golden setting as military boots become present. The elite special force unit captain Lee Yoon-Ah, an army mommy. An underling asks her to be more gentle as she freaks out all the other soldiers. She brushes her face and mentions how she hasn't shown them half of her horrifying side yet. The underling then mentions this is why all the soldiers call her the devil. Lee Yoon-Ah is a soldier at heart with outstanding performances and excellent grades in the military academy. She was also the first student to earn the title of captain. The underling then mentions, however, that if she keeps up this attitude, she will never find someone who is genuinely true. Yoon-Ah tells him she has no interest in love or marriage, to which the underling asks if she plans to be a soldier for the rest of her life. She responds by saying, of course, as a man comes running in from behind yelling, "Captain," the messengers state that a village thought to be the enemy's residence has been destroyed, to which Yoon-Ah mentions it must be the U.S. looking to spread freedom again. A bomb then goes off as Yoon-Ah covers up, and her men shout in pain. She yells at her soldiers to guard their positions and that they are under attack. She says a non-monetizable word as someone yells for the captain to watch out. A big all nuke then seems to rain down, causing a massive boom. Yoon-Ah seems to levitate and watches the flash as it gets even brighter. And then even closer, silence is then heard as the lights go out. I wonder if this is what Oppenheimer's movie will feel like. She wonders if she's still alive as a fancy room can be seen. She sits up as she notes she does not feel any pain in her body. The extravagance of the room seems to shock her as she sits silently in bed. She wonders what is with the fancy princess-like dress she is wearing as the door opens to her shock. She runs to the maid, who says excuse me before her hand is grabbed. She puts the maid under arrest as the maid shouts my lady. Yoon-Ah asks the maid who she is and where they are before warning that she has 3 seconds to answer this. Yoon-Ah notes her body feels weak whenever she moves before the maid asks her what she is doing. The maid then calls her Lady Rosalie, and we then get to see what she looks like now. Narrator interjection, but how is this fair? She looked good in her former life and even in her new life. I only had one life, and I was born looking ugly as hell. Yoon-Ah, who is now Rosalie, internally says wait a minute. She notes that this voice is not hers as the maid pleads with Lady Rosalie to release her as her arm is about to break. Rosalie does so as she stares at her arms and notes they are not here. The many scars she had accumulated from training, as well as the tanness and firmness of her skin. She then yells for a mirror, to which the maid tells her it is over there. She then asked the maid for her name again, to which the maid asked if something was wrong before referring to our female lead as Lady Rosalie Judah Hart. Rosalie pinches herself to see if this is all real before thinking about her new name. She recalls this being the name of a character in a book her friend had written. She recalls her homie asking what she thought about it, to which our female lead called the character Rosalie pathetic. She also said that romance novels were not her type. She mentioned that they were sometimes very frustrating to read and required mental training. But this character, Rosalie in particular, is the most pathetic she has ever seen. Her friend tells her that is not the point and that the main plot revolves around the male lead helping the sweet female lead, which Yoon-Ah calls hard to read. Yoon-Ah mentions that the female lead is sweet, but her character is too much, while also saying the male lead was kind of crazy. And not her type at all. Now, in the present times, her reflection can be seen in a mirror. She stares in silence before dropping the F-bomb. 4 days would pass, and we see her now sipping tea, having accepted what had happened to her. Despite this, she still cannot handle what is going on. She is currently in her friend's novel as the character called Rosalie, who will soon lose her powers. 5 years ago, Rosalie had lost her father and was forced to live with her stepmom Bella. Rosalie was the heir to the duchy due to her royal blood but was soon found to be too timid and incapable of taking the throne. This caused her stepmom to become the lead figure in the family and use Rosalie as a puppet. Her stepmother had an obsession with luxury, slowly depleting the family wealth before later on joining the Marquis of Wendell to initiate a territorial war. Having taken advantage of Rosalie, this stepmother would steal all the property and possessions while leaving without a trace. After winning the territorial war due to the help of other parties and becoming a noble herself, nobody ever knew about her shady past. Our female lead wonders what to do and whether she should change Rosalie's fate or allow the story to flow naturally. The truth is that this story does not have a set ending yet, and our female wonders if she should keep it that way. She, however, does not want this to happen and decides to think of everything going on first. She calls for Emma to bring her a pen as she then starts to write. She will not get any help from any existing characters yet, so she must prepare for the upcoming territorial battle in 4 months. She notes that this way she can save the duchy's economic power before deciding that she will also need to increase military power. Our female lead, who is now Rosalie, rings her bell as a maid comes in. She asks for the maid to prepare a dress as she will head out. The maid nervously questions if she is Rosalie, to which our female lead responds yes. Our female lead notes this girl is quite amazingly perceptive, as she is the one who stays by the real Rosalie's side till the end of the story. Rosalie then refers to the maid as Emma and mentions how since her father died, Rosalie herself has not shown any dignity. She tells the maid she has now changed, as she is the duchess of this land. The maid seems stunned as she holds her apron before telling Rosalie that she'll help her dress up. We later see our female lead in a wonderful dress as Emma asks Rosalie where she is going. Rosalie says title to Emma's confusion. She tells the maid she'd like to stop being referred to as lady. Emma apologizes for the rudeness as Rosalie says to be careful about calling her that from now on. Emma thinks to herself about how much Rosalie has changed as we then transition to the training ground. As Rosalie walks, Emma calls for the duchess. She then asks why they are at the training grounds, as we then see all the dudes there have finally noticed her. They all wonder what the princess is doing here, as Rosalie then says everyone is out of their minds. Someone asks if there is a problem, which causes Rosalie to turn and see Knight Commander Aaron. Rosalie says she is here to see Aaron, which clearly confuses the guy. Aaron notes it seems like Rosalie is no longer afraid of Bella to Wick. Rosalie asks. He asks Aaron if he'd be scared of a three-tongued snake in front of him. This again confuses Aaron before he starts to laugh. He then calls her Bella's pawn and asks if she is spying on this place, which leaves Rosalie speechless. He asks why she is not saying anything, as Rosalie notes Aaron is neither making eye contact with her or running away. Rosalie then says that his reaction is understandable considering her previous behavior, to which Aaron asks if something is wrong with her head. She then yells Commander Aaron's name before asking if his loyalty to the family is still in his heart. He yells, telling her she is asking an obvious question, as he has been serving this family for many generations, so of course it is. Rosalie tells him well done as she then turns to walk away, which again confuses him. And confused as well, not gonna lie. It is later seen that she watches over the training on the 1st, 3rd, and 6th day. This all builds up to Aren asking why on earth she is here. She tells him she is watching them train, to which Aren asks what she thinks about it. She calls it terrible, to which he calls what she said nonsense. She glares at him as he now stiffens up. He wonders what is up with this aura, since it feels like that of a well-trained knight. She tells him just by watching them, it appears that they are incapable of beating or killing anyone. She tells him she is sure they can do better, to which Aren clenches his fist and tells her she never even cared about the knight's true potential. She then crosses her arms and offers to give a hand. Aren asks if she can even do this and if Bella would allow it, to which Rosalie notes if they do this she is sure it will pay off. Rosalie then asks Emma if Bella fired the old butler, to which Emma says yes. Rosalie then mentions she will cut her off, which causes Emma to freak out as she wonders what Bella will do when she finds out. Rosalie reminds Emma that she is the duchess and tells her to calm down. She then says she has a favor to ask Emma. 3 days later, Rosalie is telling someone to come into the room. It is the old butler that worked for the duchy named Dahl. He tells Rosalie it has been a while since they met, to which Rosalie says she is taking this as a sign he is willing to work here again. She notes to herself this man was living in the suburbs after being fired until she asked Emma to deliver a message. She notes that she doesn't even know what Emma said to him. Dallin tells her she has changed, to which Rosalie says it is time to change before directly asking if he is willing to work for her once more. He bows down saying yes, which causes our female lead to smile. Why is she so fine? It is noted in the novel the original Rosalie could not wear the family ring, but that today is different. Our female lead says she will change her fate as she places the ring on her finger, unlike Charles Barkley. Someone yells, saying she wants them to bring her Rosalie. A maid nervously tells her to visit Rosalie's room if she has something to say, to which Bella notes it seems like Rosalie is now pretending to be the duchess now. She then smiles as she notes she needs to meet her eye to eye now. She then yells Rosalie's name as we later see Rosalie peacefully at her table. The rabid female dog stares at her before asking if she can hear her bark. Rosalie notes how nosy it is before noting her personality is exactly like in the book. Rosalie calls her a paranormal snake as Bella calls Rosalie rude and asks if Riley taught her that. Rosalie then recalls that is the name of her character's mother and recalls that her own mother taught her that she should rip off the necks of anyone who touches her. She then reflects on her former family, who were a complete military family from multiple generations. To them, discipline and values are the most important aspects of life. She notes that after joining the military she realized that despite language and culture being different there was no place for that in the military. essentially saying none of that matters in the military and that we are all human on equal footing. She then angrily slams the table as she notes due to being in the military, she has already had enough of this class-based society. Bella asks what Rosalie just said and tells her to stop pretending to be the duchess. She also mentions she will fire her butler again as Rosalie starts to walk over. Rosalie then asks Bella if she knows who she's talking to. Bella raises her hand as she asks how dare Rosalie talk so rudely, but it is grabbed mid-attack. Bella says to let go as Rosalie notes she cannot believe this woman is hard to deal with. She internally decides to start physical training tomorrow. Bella then pulls her hand away and pants before being stunned as Rosalie mentions that she is 7th Duchess of the Judah Hart family. She calls Bella the former Duchess and tells her to act respectfully. Rosalie then asks if Bella understands before yelling "answer me," which causes the dog to whimper yes. Rosalie then calls for Dolan and then tells him to take Bella back to her room. Dolan says yes to that, and he then tells Bella let's go. Feet can be seen moving as Eren then asks if Rosalie called for him. He is stunned as he sees Dolan, to which Dolan says it has been a while. Eren talks about the rumors being true and notes there was also one about Rosalie giving Bella a good show. Rosalie angrily tells them to get back to work as Eren then sits down saying understood. She tells him they are going to improve Knight's strength and that she is raising their salaries. He asks if she is sure about this before she tells him to train them based on this paper. He tells her he will train them with all his might and stops mid-sentence as he reads the paper. On the paper are things like 2,000 push-ups, sit-ups, and climbing mountains. Basically that Uncle Iroh prison training regime. Rosalie sips her tea as she recalls mentioning to him that she'd help bring the knights back to life. She tells him in a few weeks she will be the one to directly train them. Eren says he now understands why she raised the salary and also the training. He tells her it won't be easy for the knights to train like this and that public opinion of their knights are not good before Rosalie stops him mid-sentence and puts her teacup down. She reminds him that in the past, their duchy had the best knights before asking what he thinks about them now. She tells him they will start training in a week, to which Eren tells her all right and that he will update the training regimen. As he leaves, Emma says hi to him. Emma then tells Rosalie a letter has arrived for her. As Rosalie asks from whom, it says Sonia Ammons, who is actually a friend of Rosalie's and also the real female protagonist in this novel. Emma notes, it has been a while since they've seen each other and asks what she said. Rosalie says that they will be having a guest in 2 weeks. Rosalie notes that it was around this time in this novel that Sonia found out about Rosalie's mistreatment, and that the Crown Prince will get involved. Rosalie notes to herself she does not need the help anymore. Rosalie then asks Emma if there is any news on what they talked about earlier, to which Emma says Dolan will pick it up the day after tomorrow. Rosalie then smiles, and she notes that is good. In a week we see all the knights smiling as Eren then asks Rosalie what kind of outfit she has on. She has on some combat gear. Some dorks remark that she is trying to match her outfit for the training in a mocking manner. She turns and glares, and they then note this will be a piece of cake. Rosalie is clearly angered as she then sighs and says they will start training. Eren asks what they are waiting for and tells everyone to gather up. One guy says he does not want to do it. He mentions that they do not care if she is a duchess as they will not listen to her even if she is a self-proclaimed training master. This causes the other men to laugh. Rosalie asks who he is. Ron notes this is Toronto, the oldest and highest-ranking knight. Rosalie notes the word high rank before asking again if what Eren says is true. She then asks for him to show her his sword. Eren tries to warn her about him being high rank as she then says she does not care, and flips her hat off. She then moves her knife back and gets into a stance. Toronto asks if she is sure about that posture as all the other knights laugh. She then draws his sword as he then tells her to make sure not to regret this. He swings and misses as she then steps forward moving towards his stomach. She then slashes right by his neck as he then trips over. She tells him his head would have come off if this was a real battlefield. Side note, but step on me too. He tells her he surrenders as she notes angrily how easily he surrendered. She asks how dare a knight like him surrender so easily and says that there is no surrender unless they die. She asks if all the other knights understand as they nervously say yes. She tells them to answer her properly as they more vigorously say yes. Someone then calls for Rosalie, which turns out to be Sonia Ammons. Rosalie notes that she came on the exact same day as training before noting the person next to her. Sonia later asks what happened and says that she is surprised. Rosalie says it was no big deal before staring ahead. She notes Sonia is exactly like she had envisioned, while Derivis looks a lot colder than she had imagined. Sonia sips her tea in silence and the awkward silence descends on the three. Sonia then asks if they should have a tea party tomorrow, to which Rosalie agrees and says she will get it ready. Sonia then asks if she wants to go have a look around at the blooming flowers in the garden. Rosalie says she still has something to do and asks Dolan to show Sonia around. Dolan then ushers Sonia out as Rosalie now looks ahead. Derivis stares at her as well as she notes they might have a snowball fight soon, basically saying the two will be cold towards one another. Derivis notes that she is no longer avoiding his eyes anymore as Rosalie mentions she has done nothing wrong to him. Derivis then mentions that she may have done something wrong to someone else though. It is noted that Derivis Velotic is the crown prince of the empire, who is a talented or a swordmaster, making him and Rosalie completely different. It is noted that without Sonia the two of them would never have had this conversation here. Rosalie notes that after solving this territorial war and securing the titanium mine, the crown prince won't be involved in this situation anymore. Rosalie then tells the prince she will go back to training now as she then gets up from her seat. She starts to walk, but he does so as well. She tells him he must be lost as the garden is on the other side, to which he tells her he is following her to the training ground. She wonders why he would be interested in her training. In the original novel, Aaron would become so disappointed in Rosalie that he would leave to join Derivis instead. She notes that today she cannot lose Aaron before telling Derivis not to come as the knights might lose focus with him around. They both stare coldly at one another before he mentions that he'll have a look at the training grounds later. He then walks up to her, saying he doesn't follow anyone's wishes. This infuriates her as she notes this man is just as crazy as in the novel. He walks away and notes this will be fun. Later we see Rosalie acting like my middle school PE teacher and yelling at the knights for one more push-up. The knights shout 43 and 44 as Rosalie then mentions that they are slowing down. She tells them to start all over again before they now refer to her as a devil. They are later seen running laps and Rosalie notes to herself she is still far from achieving her goals. She then notes that at least beating Toronto did help with things. She notes that she actually would have lost that fight had he not looked down on her. She also then wonders why Derivis is so interested in her as she recalls him never being interested in Rosalie in the novel. She herself wonders if it is due to her having changed. Later, we see running as someone then asks if Rosalie is preparing for training again this morning. She asks what he is doing here as he mentions he is here to train as well and that he did not expect the Duchess to be here as well. She asks if that is so and says she hopes the best for him as she does not care if he trains or not. He then sighs as she continues to stretch. She then glances over as he then sits to meditate his aura. She stares in confusion as he continues to meditate. Not gonna lie, this black outfit is hitting different right now. She notes this what they call aura training, and that in the novel this is the power used by sword masters. She notes that seeing it in person is actually pretty cool. She then calls for His Highness as he says yes. She asks for him to show her what he can do as he asks if she is curious. He tells her that the aura corresponds to the person's eye color, and she then asks if she can touch it. He notes that he does not think she will feel anything if she touches it as she leans over. She puts her finger on it as she notes she thought it would feel hot, but it actually feels like nothing at all. She stares in amazement as Derivis watches over her. He notes he has never seen her look like this before, and then the two lock eyes. He tells her that she does not usually show her face and that this is the first time he's looked at her properly. She asks him is that so as she turns to the side. She tells him that's cool as she continues to look away. He notes that he heard she gets referred to as the Devil Duchess, and she asks how he knows. He tells her she knows what happened. He tells her that the knights seem to be making a lot of rude jokes, so she seemed to have doubled their training intensity. She angrily tells him it does not matter, to which he tells her that sometimes showing her devilish side does help. He also mentions that sometimes it is the devil that beats humans rather than the angels anyways. He then mentions that her eyes are too beautiful to be called a devil and that real devils can't have eyes like that. He then asks if she wants him to come to training or if seeing that was already enough. She tells him one time is more than enough as he then tells her all right, and that she can continue her workout now. She continues to stretch in silence as she then starts to think about how Derivis obviously never looked at Rosalie in this manner during the novel, and wonders why he is suddenly interested in her before noting she needs to be wary. Later, we see Sonia run and shouting Rosalie's name along with Derivis. Rosalie then says to come here as the tea party is about to start. Sonia asks if Rosalie will actually be here at this tea party, to which Rosalie says he actually will stay this time. It is noted that in the novel Bella and Marquis of Wendell are very close, and will secretly contact one another to start a territorial war. She then internally says let's see if this works out as it was originally written. Sonya then says she has not seen Bella and that the last time she saw her was when she was packing her things. Rosalie says that Bella left to go to the villa for a while, as we then see some red heels. A stench can be seen in the air as Rosalie notes they were just speaking of the devil. Bella says it is a pleasure to meet the crown prince of the empire as she then looks up. The three then stare at her as Bella mentions Rosalie never said the prince was coming. She asks if Rosalie was determined to embarrass her or something, to which Sonya says that's not it. Rosalie then asks why she would be concerned about that. Bella asks what she is talking about as she mentions she is the Grand Duchess of the Judah Hart family. Rosalie stands up saying she is the Duchess of the Judah Hart family as Bella asks what about it. Rosalie says this means that Bella has to follow her orders. She then tells Dolan to take Bella to her room as if she were a toddler. Dolan tells the lady to go, which angers her. She says how dare and tries to strike again, but again her filthy hand is grabbed. Rosalie mentions unless she wants to get dragged away in front of guests by knights, she should just leave quietly. This causes the crown prince to smirk as he notes he never informed her of his visit, as it is the duchess's choice on whom they want to inform about it. A furious Bella then turns to walk away as someone then calls for Rosalie. Sonya asks if this is the real Rosalie that she knows, to which Rosalie just says yes. Sonya mentions she is surprised that Rosalie kicked Bella out, and that it feels like this is a completely different person. Sonya then backtracks, saying it's not like she hates the change, but she just thought someone bad may have triggered this. Rosalie says she understands what Sonya means, as Sonya then smiles, saying that seeing Rosalie like this relieves a lot of her worries. She says she is about to have tears as Rosalie notes this is what is expected of the lovely heroine. Later, we see Dolan tell Rosalie that they have selected some candidates for the position of general officer, to which Rosalie says she already has someone in mind. He asks who might that be as someone is then seen walking in. It turns out to be Neon, a close aide to Bella and the former general officer. He says he has something to say, to which Rosalie says to tell her. Neon notes to himself how dare Rosalie leave Bella like this. He also notes that a unilateral dismissal is unacceptable. The story notes that the money Bella and Neon took for themselves is impossible to recover. Neon yells, saying she has no shame as he has worked for the Duchess family for years, and says that she will have to deal with the Duchess after throwing him out. He tells her if she backs out of the dismissal this time, he will let it slide. Rosalie then wonders if she should teach this ugly mustache a lesson. She notes he is not from the army and that she should be more patient with nobles though. She does however decide that she needs to let him know who the real Duchess of this kingdom is. She walks over, saying she has a list of all the corrupt things he has committed and that she has nothing to say to him even if she makes an immediate action for him. We see Irene come in calling for the Duchess as Rosalie then mentions that she wanted to confirm to him that Neon will be leaving the castle. He asks if she means that man, to which Neon notes it is the Knight Commander. He then tells her to leave this guy to him as he prepares to serve a knuckle sandwich. We later see Neon shout in pain, as it is noted that Irene used to suffer a lot while under Neon. Dolan then asks about who she is talking about as a replacement, as she then tells her to bring back the man named Eredin. It is noted that this person was the first commoner to graduate from the academy with a perfect score, and that in the novel he was the aide and general officer of the crown prince. She notes to herself that in this world, one must always find people they can use. Later, she talks to Sonya, who mentions that her father bought her a villa. Rosalie notes that must have been nice, as Sonya also mentions getting dresses and jewelry. Someone then yells that Eredit has arrived, and Rosalie tells him to let him in. Eredit then comes into the room. Not gonna lie, I thought he'd look more handsome, but he kinda looks like a nerd. Sonya notes she should go now as Dolan leads her out. Rosalie tells Eredit to have a seat and asks if he can start work tomorrow. She mentions the commute may be hard, but there will be a lot of overtime work for him. She starts to continue before he says he thought this was an interview and asks if she recruited him already without even asking one question. She tells him this is just her way of finding and recruiting talent quickly. This is probably the same hiring process Walmart uses, considering all the crackhead employees. For some reason, Sonya looks coldly at the two and even has a scary eye watching in on them. She gives Snake the Grass vibes, I'm not gonna lie. Rosalie says right before asking if he is going to change his mind. He tells her that is not the case and that he is just confused as to why she picked a commoner for this job. He then mentions that maybe she is trying to use him to cover up the corruption that the general officer committed in this kingdom. She notes little is known about where Eredit came from as she tells him that is not it. She says she will not do such a thing to him and that she chooses him purely from talent alone. She continues to think about how Eredit is an ambitious man who is definitely not cowardly and is rather unsympathetic. She calls him a man who can see through the glass. He tells her that he understands and asks if he can start working tomorrow. She tells him no problem and that her room has been prepared already, and he thanks her for the consideration and says see you tomorrow. He walks out and stands outside the door. He wonders if the rumors about the Duchess being timid were a lie, as he notes she seemed determined instead. He notes she even treated a commoner like him as a talented person, and that she has the appearance of a skilled Duchess who has gone through all sorts of things. He starts to wonder what is going on as someone says they saw him earlier. It is Sonya who asks what his conversation with Rosalie was about. She mentions it must have been hard to talk to a timid person and asks if they got along well. She tells him if there is anything, he can go ahead and tell her. Wait, does this mean that everyone Rosalie from the novel knew was a female dog then? Her stepmom, of course, and even her best friend. She asks him what it is, and he tells her it is nothing. He then says goodbye to her, noting that he heard this woman was a friend of the crown prince. He notes that his first impression of her is not that good and that, furthermore, she seems like the type to get easily swept away by emotion and make mistakes. Later, we see Rosalie, who asks His Highness what he is doing. He asks her to lend him a horse, as she notes how foreign this feels to a modern girl like herself. To her shock, he says he plans to go horseback riding and asks if the Duchess would join him. She says she doesn't know how to and that she will let her servants bring him to the stable to get a horse. He smiles as he says he'd like the Duchess to be the one to show him the horse. She notes how annoying he is as she then says follow me. Later, at the beautiful stable, we see the pair walk inside. She tells him he can choose whichever horse he wants and then tells him to enjoy the ride. He then asks if she'd like to try riding a horse and notes that the weather is nice after all. He tells her to get on and that he'll pull the reins. She is silent before letting out a sigh. Later, they both stand beside the horse as she prepares to get on. She notes how uncomfortable this dress is as he tells her he can give her a lift and then says to please excuse him. He then lifts her up the horse. As she sits there, he starts to talk about how she needs to get used to it first. He then stares before boarding himself. She mentions how he said he'd just pull the reins, to which he says it looked like the Duchess would prefer to run with the horse. He tells her he will start now and lean on him comfortably. He then says, hey, as they then both charge off. Rosalie felt the breeze as she closed her eyes, and before we knew it, it was sunset. Her eyes look on at the sight of mountains and the sun falling down the sky. The prince notes he never thought there was a place like this at this mansion, as she notes she did not know either. They are silent before Derivis drops off first. He asks for her hand, but she jumps off herself. He takes a breath before looking the other way. He tells her that an ancient saying once said that the wind blows away all your worries and that he feels that this is true. She is silent before saying he is not sure what he is worried about, but that she hopes it gets resolved soon. He seems touched by the statement as he then mentions she doesn't look very interested in his concerns. She tells him she won't solve it with him, but she can if he wants. He notes to himself that she is not like all the other Stitches who try to flatter everyone. She is simple as well as different, and despite her expression being empty, he likes it. At sunset, we see Emma noticing something. Sonya is walking around before Emma asks if she needs anything. Sonya mentions not having seen Divy or Rosalie anywhere, as Emma mentions seeing them go horseback riding. She then points, saying they are as the horse strolls through the gates. This clearly angers Sonya, who starts to note he was not like that before. Emma calls for Lady Sonya and then notices something. Her face has completely changed. She walks forward and calls for Emma before asking if she has had a hard time since Rosalie changed. She holds the maid's shoulder as she mentions how she herself could give some good advice. Emma nervously tells her no thanks and that she is good. Sonya then walks away, noting it's just hard when someone you know changes so much. Dahlin is closing the gates as the reins of the horse are pulled back. The horse jumps slightly upward to stop. Rosalie tells Derivis that since they are here, he should get off. As they both get off, Sonya calls for the two and asks where they have been. The prince tells her they just went out for a while and then walks right by her. Sonya then calls for Rosalie and asks to tag along next time as she is very lonely. Rosalie apologizes and asks if she'd like some tea. Rosalie then tells Emma to prepare some tea. As the pair walked by, Emma stared at a smiling Sonya before noting something was very wrong. Rosalie walks down the large hall before someone asks her if that is a training suit. Bella calls it a vulgar outfit for a noblewoman, as Rosalie just completely ignores her, and then tells her she may go now if she has errands. Bella yells, saying nothing will change, even if she has changed. This prompts Rosalie to turn and ask if Bella is afraid. Bella questions this as Rosalie asks if Bella is scared because she got ignored. Rosalie also mentions that Bella threatening her is like getting cornered by a bunch of rats. Bella then asks how dare Rosalie talk like this just because the prince is here, and that when he leaves, someone interrupts mid-sentence and questions what Bella would do once he leaves. He again asks what Bella is going to do to the duchess as she turns to see the crown prince. Bella says it is nothing and just some household chores before the crown prince says he wonders why he and Sonia have to leave over a simple chore. Bella is silent and trembling and starts to talk about the chore before Rosalie starts stepping forward. She tells Bella to be careful what she says next time, especially since once the guests leave, there is no telling what will happen to her. Bella clenches her fist as she walks away, mentioning that she was just trying to help. Rosalie then asks if Derivis is looking for her, to which he says Lady Sonia is inviting her to tea. Rosalie tells him she will go change clothes before he mentions that the training suit does look good on her. She sort of scoffs at this before telling him she knows and to go ahead of her to the tea. This causes him to laugh. He notes he was wondering if what Bella said bothered her, but notes that Rosalie looks different in that style. Later, we see Rosalie bowing down, saying they look forward to seeing him again. Sonia mentions that she will see Rosalie next time before the crown prince says he'll see her in a week. This annoys Sonia before Rosalie calls her name. Sonia then tells her that she will see Rosalie again at the party. The carriage then rides off as Sonia holds her head up with both arms. She's not cute, so why is she striking that pose? Sonia asks the crown prince when he and Rosalie got so close. Divi mentions it was fun and how he does not really know. Sonia mentions her change of personality was so sudden and does not fit her. She also mentions now that Bella is afraid to confront Rosalie, to which Divi says she does not need to worry about that. Sonia sits wondering what this feeling is and why it crept on her all of a sudden. She grabs at her dress as Divi calls for her before she tells him it is nothing. Later, we see someone laying down some paper. It is Gilbert, the blacksmith, who mentions this is a very unusual blueprint for a crossbow. He mentions that the handle is made of wood, yet it functions like a gun and is very portable. He says he's never seen a crossbow like this before, as Rosalie mentions the wood will make it lighter than iron and easier to supply. She mentions a downside is the quality though, but she mentions that he'd probably know a solution to this. Gilbert mentions magic could solve this, as Rosalie notes he must be referring to enchanting magic. He notes that you can add magnification magic to the bow and use an ogre tendon for the bowstring. This would increase the bow's range of attack while the crossbow would remain lightweight to use. I'd add Infinity 1 and Flame 1 to it as well. Rosalie asks what they should do to get the magic, and Gilbert says they can buy a magic scroll with a circle inside it. And as for the tendons, the price of those will be so high. She tells him she will handle that before asking if he'd mind taking a look at something. She asks if he is referring to that for magnification. She tells him this is a scope to help shoot more accurately and asks if he can make this one. Eren tells her he can despite it being the first time he's ever seen it. Rosalie then asks him what he will do after he starts making these, to which he mentions he will keep his mouth shut. Later, we see someone questioning Rosalie if she is going to make an archer unit. She mentions that they are called a firing unit, to be exact, and that there are some people in their ranks that are not proficient at the sword. She tells him to go round them up and create a new unit. He asks who will be the one to teach them, and she turns and says that she will. Later in the room, light peers inward. She reads a letter she wrote to someone named Noir Ancest, saying that she'd like to meet ahead of schedule. She is a woman who runs the largest merchant guild and was a good trade partner with Derivis. Someone knocks, to which she tells them to come in. It is Emma who says she has brought refreshments and tea, for which Rosalie thanks her. Rosalie tells Emma to give this letter to Countess Moir Onsef. Emma holds the letter before nervously calling for the Duchess. She mentions that she is in her 30s and notes that she has been working as a maid since she was young and has met a lot of people. Rosalie says to get straight to the point, which Emma says is that. She cannot finish as Erudit then walks in the room, saying he has important matters to discuss. Emma then says, never mind, and that she will just say it later. Rosalie then tells Emma not to hesitate if she needs something from her. Emma says yes and thank you before rushing out of the room. As she closes the door, she notes apart from Sonia, she herself would like to ask if she could be Rosalie's friend. She notes to herself that this may be going too far. She then notes to herself that as long as Rosalie is Duchess, she will continue to take care of her. Protect this girl at all costs. Why are the maids in these types of stories so underrated? Later in the room, both Erudit and Rosalie sit in silence before someone yells about how a person like her should be able to enter the room. The maid protests this as Bella yells for them to get out of the way as she needs to see Rosalie. Bella busts right into the room and asks who decided to reduce her funds. Rosalie notes it must have been a while since Bella received that notice. Bella mentions how she heard Rosalie was attending a party and asks if she is going in an expensive dress and jewelry. She then calls Rosalie a coward as Rosalie mentions Bella's corruption last month is worth buying a lot of jewelry. Bella says what as Rosalie mentions Bella can sell all her luxuries if he wants her money back. Rosalie then also says that if Bella comes into her room with nonsense one more time, she will cut the flesh off of her arm. Bella stares down in fear, and her hand trembles at the blade. She notes that Rosalie is out of her mind as Rosalie then yells at the maid. She tells the maid to take Bella away as the maid asks if Lady Bella is alright. Erudit stares on as he notes that's why they call her the Devil Duchess. She notes that the rumor must be spreading all over the place as Erudit says she is quite famous. He says that if this offends her, she should make some money instead and just go. She tells him no and not yet. Later, we see Rosalie and a crowd of people as her knights mention to each other that they should go to the square. Rosalie mentions to them that there is a training ground in the other mansion. Someone then tells the Duchess that Butler Martin is waiting in the mansion. She tells Erudit to take care of the mansion while she is away, and he tells her he can handle this. She then tells her men to go, and they arrive at a big, tall building. The carriage rolls through as she stares outside. Emma notes that the Duchess might get blind once the portal commences, to which Rosalie says she will watch it since it's been a while since she'd seen one. A light appears as the carriage is under a magic circle. A poof then occurs as they have now arrived. Rosalie starts to walk out as she notes how boring it was. Outside, she stares ahead at the Duchess' capital residence. Many greet her, saying it is a pleasure meeting her this morning as she then starts to walk through. She notes to herself that this is why Dalin told her the capital residence was beautiful. She then calls for Emma to bring her some comfortable clothing to wear. Rosalie then puts on a new fit. It kind of looks like a Western cowgirl fit, to be honest. Someone asks if she is able to leave without an escort, as he mentions it might be dangerous for her out there. Aaron grabs onto the guy named Arthur and mentions to him that if he touches her, he'll likely have some broken bones and missing fingers. Rosalie says she brought her dagger, and they are in the capital under broad daylight, so there is no need to worry. Arthur then tells her that he is hoping for her safety. Later, out on the streets, we see Rosalie walking around with a hood on. She notes how lovely it is here, especially with all the kids running around. Someone says, "Let's go," as a kid yells it hurts. She notes guys like him are everywhere, and the guy continues to drag the kid before Rosalie reaches her hand out. She grabs the kid away from him as he asks who she is. She then leaps forward, puts a dagger to his throat, and shocks him. She tells him to turn around as he notes he is screwed. She asks for his motive with the child as he is in tears. He mentioned that kids like him are expensive, so he wanted to take him home. Rosalie asks if the little boy can move and go call on some guards. The kid runs off as she looks on. She then turns back and asks for him to guide her to his whereabouts. Later, in a dark alley, we see a bunch of kind and respectable men in society asking Oren where the kids are. Oren then falls over as Rosalie carries a bloody knife. They ask who she is, and she then goes on a rampage and slashes the other guy as well. Someone yells that women must be the leader and to get her as Rosalie is surrounded. Divi, for some reason, is here as well. He asks the Duchess what she is doing as she turns and recognizes that voice. She then asks what His Highness is doing as he is tied up. She tells her he is playing as she notes he must be crazy. He then notes that since the Duchess has now appeared, he should probably finish this off. The men wonder how he did that as he then says if they are confronting the Crown Prince, they must know how to handle things like this. Rosalie then says she'll go left, and he mentions he'll go right. The men hold hands as they shout in fear. Later, a knight asks if the two of them finished off the thugs, to which Rosalie says that is right. He then asks who she is, and she asks if that matters. She tells him she is a nobleman and that he must not dare to know. She tells him the man behind her is her knight and that they should do their job and take care of those fools. Rosalie notes Derivis probably wants to hide his identity from them as if they knew it, things would just get more complicated. The man then says they have to tell him who they are as someone then shouts. The man from before is in pain as Rosalie asks if he still wants to know. The knights then say that's all they need to know and that they will move now. He tells Derivis that it's best if they leave now and tells him to go. He stares at her and blushes before saying he understands. He later asks how she knew he wanted to hide his identity, to which she mentions she noticed it. He also says she is good with daggers, and as she tells him, she is heading home to clean up. He tells her that was cool of her and says to use this cloth as she says no thanks. He tells her he has done her a favor as Rosalie says she will use it as thanks then. He then tells her to call him by name as she mentions how disrespectful this is to His Highness. Later, we see people shout 1-2, and Rosalie stares on. She notes the troops seem to be handling it well now as some men do sit-ups. She decides to make it a little harder then. Later, we see exhausted men wondering how many times they need to do this and how it's worse than usual. They wonder who decided to wake up the devil as one mentions it is not time to worry about what happened to the Duchess yesterday. Someone then comes in saying a guest has arrived, to which she asks what Derivis is doing here. He says he wanted to hang out with her as she does not seem to have scheduled work. She asks how he knew that, to which he says the butler is it looks like he is burnt out. The butler then asks why the crown prince is here as Derivis tells him to hang out with the princess. He mentions that they can enjoy the capital better than anyone else. They both stare at one another as Rosalie then asks if he really likes hanging out with her that much. He then tells her if it's not fun, he will not ask her again in the future. She is silent before telling Emma to bring a coat. Later in the town, a man seems to be proposing a gambling game as someone wonders if they should try it. The gambling man mentions these people are stupid as this is all a trick before Divi continues to say this seems fun. The crook notes his clothes look expensive and then asks Divi to give it a try and try to match the cards. Rosalie says it is better if he doesn't before Divi drops down some gold racks. The guy mentions there are 3 difficulties and asks which he'd like to try, as Divi says he wants the same level as the prize. The man flips over some cards and asks him to pick one. Divi then grabs Rosalie's hands and tells her to join him and make a bet. He tells her the winner can make any wish they'd like. She tells him that it is great but that they will play by themselves. They both appear seated as they both yell start. Divi says he sees and Rosalie yells this one. The dealer wonders how as Divi notes it seems like he has won. Rosalie then grabs the dealer and asks for the money. A pouch can be seen as someone asks if they got all the money. She tells him it is not enough to reward cheaters like him as he mentions she is funny and notes a noblewoman would never have played that seriously before. Later, they shoot arrows as Divi wins again. They play cards, but she also loses to him again. They even play a board game to which she loses and she wonders why she keeps losing so much. Divi says he feels sorry for the Duchess, and she notes he truly does not at all. She notes she should at least win a shooting game, though, as Divi notes how competitive she is. He then opens his eyes as he notes he has been having too much fun lately. Later at dusk, we see them both staring down. Rosalie notes her feet hurt from walking now, as she notes there should be a shoe store around here. Divi then says, "Please excuse me," and he sweeps her out off her feet. She asks what the hell he is doing as he mentions her feet hurt. People stare as she is later seen seated. He tells her to wait here for a moment as he then runs off. Later, he calls for her, and she asks where he has been and why he left. He then pulls a Cinderella and says she has been walking a lot today. He says he cannot believe she can still walk with all that pain. She tells him she can do that herself as he tells her to stay still. Yes, stay still so I can take a screenshot of this as well. He asks her how it feels to meet the crown prince as he notes this should be the first time a royal has knelt for her. She tells him he is much nicer than she had assumed, and he says he is glad to hear that. She thanks His Highness as he wonders if they should try another shoe store. She tells him this one is comfortable to use and tells him they should go to the next stall. He smiles as he tells her to slow down. She mentions that they should bring Sonia to hang out next time, but he tells her no, as having her here is enough for him to have fun. He tells her she is a good friend but very boring to play with. She notes that in the novel, Derivis felt rational feelings for Sonia but that this does not matter to her now as her battle is more important than romance. Later, someone mentions they heard the Duchess is coming today. Someone notes that the last time they talked, she ran away and was timid. They wonder if something is going on with her before noting that they are glad Sonia is kind enough to take care of the Duchess. They then talk about how it is an honor for Sonia to have a close relationship with the prince and then talk about the rumor of Rosalie and the crown prince in the capital. Our female lead is then welcomed in as Duchess Rosalie Judah Hart. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like and subscribe for more. Comment your thoughts below. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to turn on notifications to catch the next part. Your support means everything. See you in the next one.